Hannah Ellis, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And it is a little bit strange because this is the first podcast that we're doing in person. All of the other ones that I've been doing have been from my studio at home. So thank you for welcoming us into the office. And obviously we are keeping the social distancing between us.
Obviously.
Which does work for the podcast medium, which is good. Now, let's get into this debate a little bit more. So week by week, things have been peeling back. Some of the restrictions are easing, what we're seeing from the government. I guess the question right now is the speed at which those are happening. So from the beginning of this week, 1st of June, we're looking at the fact that people can have 50 people in pubs and restaurants. Before that, it was 10. We were even talking about the fact that trying to get a booking in these places is now becoming increasingly difficult. So what do you think of the speed at the moment at which things are opening back up?
Well, look, Tim, I'm known to be a pretty impatient person, but I genuinely think that this is something that we can't rush and that we need to leave to the experts. So I think that the psyche for a lot of employees has changed legitimately, because if those health and safety risks aren't managed properly, then we could find ourselves in a pickle. But also because I think a lot of staff have now seen that their employers are making adjustments that they've previously said are not possible. So from their perspective, it's taking them time to adjust to the new normal of what that office environment might look like. But I think the employers also need to take the time in order to understand the data and, what their staff want, and to ensure that their COVID safe plan is addressing those safety concerns in their specific context. So I know that some of our clients in certain industries like tourism, hospitality, or the restaurants and pubs are dying to open up more quickly and to see some of those restrictions relaxed even further and even more swiftly. But, I think that we need to trust the government advice, and I think the success of Australia's measures so far speak for themselves. So we just need to go with the flow and maintain a nimble approach.
And do you think that from the perspective of what you're seeing from companies, you mentioned a couple of companies in specific sectors there, but what do you see companies across the board doing? I think a comment you made earlier was a lot of people thought that none of this was actually possible. We couldn't do this. It was impossible to have my workers at home. They had to be in the office. But I think a lot of people have now seen the fact that it is a distinct possibility that they can have their people in a much more distributed looking workforce. So what are you seeing across the board when it comes to the companies and what they're doing to get their people back into the office?
Well, in terms of getting people back, I think it really depends on the type of office environment, the physical layout, and any specific risks that are presented. In terms of what we're seeing, obviously the standard ones are the good old hand sanitizer, additional signage.
Might use a bit more actually.
No social catch-ups in the tea room, much to my dismay. No food prep facilities available. Also, some temperature checking and thermal scanning in the bigger companies. And obviously the staggered start and finish times, Team A, Team B, or project-specific teams, so that there's not too many people in the office and that those social distancing measures and 4 square metre parameters can be maintained. So I think that it's going to look very different, but I certainly hope that the office is not dead, as some people have been saying.
And do you think that they're on that point? Is there a general attitude that people have towards following these guidelines? Are they things that people follow regimentally, do you think? Or do you think a couple of companies open things to interpretation? Is it something that we're still working our way through at the moment?
Well, look, I think this is really unprecedented kind of territory, and I think that there are certain not negotiables like social distancing and personal hygiene, but I do think that there are other areas in which there is more flexibility for employers, and really how a company or an employer approaches those depends on their leadership, their risk appetite and their workforce. So there's certainly different responses, but I think overall even the companies, all companies are facing similar challenges in the sense that they are wanting to get the most out of their workforce, and they're wanting to maintain the health and safety of all their workers, and they're trying to work out the best way to do that.
And do you think that they feel the pressure that they have to follow what the government is saying? So I know that we've seen a number of workplaces that I've spoken to where even, I guess, with the speed at which the government is moving and they're encouraging everybody to go back to work, you still have people that are a little bit concerned about it. So what pressure do you think workplaces are actually feeling when it comes to what they think they're required to do, or in reality what they want to do or what's best for them?
Well, at this point in time, there's still a public health order which took effect as of yesterday and has been in place in largely similar terms for some time throughout May, which says that an employer must allow an employee to work from their place of residence where it's reasonably practicable to do so.
Yep.
So I think that companies that are looking to force staff back to work where there's no legitimate grounds for that, I think that they're skating on really thin ice, and that look, in our experience, prior to those public health orders coming into effect, there was certainly a lot of murmurs about, people whinging about having to allow people to work from home. But I really think that we have made some good progress in the last couple of months or few months. And the kind of attitude towards working from home has shifted, and we've made some good gains. So I think at this point, there's not a lot of companies that are looking to kind of force people back to the office. There are certainly companies that are talking about providing employees with choice and working through a staged partial return to work plan.
Yep.
But there's not a lot of people, in our experience, that are really pushing to get everyone back to the office, purely because they do have to manage those work health and safety obligations.
Yep.
And their obligation there is to eliminate risks as far as reasonably practicable or minimise those. And the safest, easiest, most cost-effective way of doing that is obviously to let people continue working from home, particularly where they've proven that they're capable of doing so.
Obviously, workplace law is something that you specialise in. So what are the other legalities that people are looking at? You've rattled off a few there, but something that I've heard quite a lot is, how do you start to then look at things of when employees choose to work from home, or that is the requirement, things like OH&S, a whole raft of other things. But there's also the other side of, as you said, if people are on thin ice, if they're trying to force people back, how do people navigate this myriad of legalities that they may not even know half of as they try and get their workforce back to a place where they wanted it to be? But the reality is being that will probably never be the place they wanted it to be.
It'll look different, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think I'm not saying this in a self-interested way, and certainly there are loads of great providers out there, but I think getting expert advice is really important, because every business is different, and the risks presented to staff and customers will be different. And you really need to understand your own business and how you can protect your customers and your staff. Otherwise, there are significant liabilities. So I think that right now, there's probably not a lot of employers that can try and force people back to the office. Yep. But certainly as, time moves on and restrictions are lifted and we all get more used to managing the safety, health and safety protocols, there will become a time where people say, well, I actually don't probably want to come back to the office. Yeah. And at that point, it's a matter for the employer to weigh up, well, is it a lawful and reasonable direction? What are the inherent requirements of that role? And I always say to my clients, well, why not? You've got to give me good grounds as to why we, can't allow that, particularly where I think a lot of people have shown during this crisis that their jobs are able to be performed largely remotely. And
do you think a lot of this comes down to communication? Because the other thing that I've heard, I think it was even yesterday, I think our editor and I were actually on a call talking to somebody about this specifically, where is it to the state where you just need to communicate no matter what side of this that you're on. So whether you're on the employer's side or whether you're on the individual side, but you have to be open with each other and very trustworthy and authentic about what are the reasons that you both have, so you can work through it, rather than just coming at it from this is our opinion, this is what we're going to do, and off we go.
Yeah, well, one of an employer's key responsibilities under the work health and safety laws that generally exist across Australia is to consult. So that really is all about that two-way dialogue. So I don't think that you can meet your obligations without having those conversations. And obviously in bigger businesses, that's going to look different. That's going to be collected through software, and there's going to be polling, and there's going to be ways of people feeding through their feedback and concerns. But certainly listening to staff about what they want and being open to having different arrangements for different people where it's operationally and commercially feasible is the key to success. And I think on the flip side, for those employers that are keen to, get people back to the office for whatever reason, whether it be collaboration, socialisation, a break from the home, because there has been some real kind of health and safety concerns arising from that lack of delineation between work and home.
Yep.
I think for those employers, I think on the flip side, communicating the social and cultural benefits when people do come back, and perhaps providing some reassurance to those people that might be more anxious about returning. I think that communication on that side will also be really important.
Yeah, because I think that point you make there around anxiety is something that a lot of people are feeling. Because right now, you have a number of people, and particularly, and again, examples that I can refer to that people I've spoken with who say, I'm just not comfortable. I'm not even seeing my friends and family still. I'm still limiting that. Therefore, why would I ever see myself kind of coming back to the workplace? And to those people, is it just a communication thing about how we work, or is it just, as you said, maybe consultative is the right word to use? Because those people you just need to talk to about how they're feeling, to remove, if we sort of put the legals aside for one moment, is actually treat them like humans, because this is a human crisis.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for too long, employers have been concerned about policing people and, imposing regimented structures and procedures. And what this crisis has really shown is that the companies that can listen and can be nimble and agile are the ones that are going to come out on top, and that are really achieving big I innovation across the board. But so I think that, in general, the crisis has also shown us that Australians can be trusted. We did put our own needs aside for the sake of the greater good, and I think workplaces should be treated the same, in the sense that, we should allow people to, we should trust people to make the decision that's right for them, provided they are performing their role, and there are no other health and safety concerns. So, there are some businesses that are trying to bring people back for the right reasons. For example, they're concerned that their call centre staff, who've been sitting at home all day, every day, fielding calls from angry customers, that doing that in that environment with no team support or, escalation means is actually harmful to their psychological safety. And so bringing them back to the call centre has been not necessarily about monitoring them, because that's very much a job where, you can see if someone's doing it, and the calls are listened to from quality control perspective all day, every day, by teams of dedicated people. But it's about making sure that that those staff are psychologically safe. And so I think trusting them, but also, being on the front foot and coming up with new ways of organising work and organising the way that work's done and allocated is also going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, because it is very much a moral and ethical question we're talking about here. I know that, again, we're approaching this from a legal point of view, and we've talked to other people from architecture to people and culture about how they're approaching it. But really, despite all the legalities that have to be navigated, it is a moral and ethical debate that you need to have with yourself, with your team, particularly because we are all humans at the end of this. And I think that can't be forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it is really difficult for employers because, for example, we had a caravan park client who's really excited about reopening, obviously, but the recommendation at the time we spoke to them was that they have someone clean the showers after every shower. Yep. And they said, well, we're not going to be able to open because we're not going to be able to afford to do that, given the restrictions on, customers, etc. And I kind of had to say to them, well, you need to make a choice about, what's more important. Can you ask the guests to take some responsibility for that process and clean the shower after they go there, and have someone clean them 3 times a day and open and try and keep this business going? Or, are you just going to stay closed until such time as the recommendation is, has been relaxed somewhat? And I think those decisions are really difficult for people to make, and the environment is moving really quickly, and so often, sound decision making kind of processes aren't being followed. But it really is not just the ethical; it's the commercial, it's the cultural, it's the the WHS. There's so many aspects to making decisions in this environment that need to be considered, and I think a lot of businesses are struggling.
Do you think we're going to find a whole raft of businesses that just choose to effectively not reopen at all, ever? Because to your point there, that you have specific requirements, particularly even with looking at retail, hospitality, those sorts of businesses are the ones where they're asking themselves, can I operate at a reduced capacity of 10 to 50 people? And despite the fact that there are many places that may be booked out, all the well-known venues and et cetera, there are going to be a number of other venues that may not have been as popular. They may have been on the rise. But for them, it's a question of, can I even operate? Because I don't know, I can't even understand how my patrons are going to react. Are they going to be too freaked out to want to come in? Are they going to be able to get over the own hurdle of how they feel about being out in public around other people to come and visit my establishment over another? Is it just that some of the well-known establishments win out of all of this and everybody else goes down? I don't know if it's a hard question, but do you see that people have to make that decision?
I think that a lot of small businesses are facing those decisions at present, and I think that the restrictions that have been in place, obviously for biosecurity and public health reasons, have meant that a lot of businesses it simply hasn't been viable for them to reopen. And I think a lot of them may not come out the other side, and I expect that once the JobKeeper scheme winds up, that, we've really just put off a lot of that pain until kind of that September time frame comes around. So, but it's hard running a small business, and I think most of them are still having a go from what we can see anecdotally across the board in the SME market in those really, badly affected industries. It's just that time frames are limited. They've got less chefs on, things take longer, customer service standards decline. But hopefully, a lot of them have had a long, hard look in the mirror, and they will come out the other side, hopefully, as a more profitable and more diverse business, potentially with, delivery services, family home cooking options, which I've been taking advantage of. So
I believe Maryvale has one of those from Mr. Wong's.
Oh, yum. Yeah. One of my favourites. But I'm a really positive, optimistic person. Yeah. So I hope that a lot of those small businesses can come out the other side, because I know how tough it is to run a small business. But I think the reality is that a lot of them won't reopen.
Well, let's stay with positivity for a little bit, because I know that we have been talking about the harsh realities of everything else that happens. What are you seeing from a positive standpoint of some of the companies that you work with, of how they have reacted to this and how they've thought, well, I will come out of this stronger on the other side, because of the innovations that they might be taking, because of the changes that they're doing, even with the way that they deal with their own people?
Yeah, I've really taken a lot of comfort from those of our clients who have shown their agility during this crisis. So, for example, one of our clients built a whole new telehealth product in a week and won a huge Victorian government contract. So that was amazing. And they were, pretty much a startup when they did that. Yep. Another client, huge client, has redirected all their retail staff, because they closed all their retail stores, to work from home and work in a call centre, help desk capacity, because all of their call centres overseas were shut down by Indian and other governments. So I have found those stories really uplifting amongst what has been a fairly devastating few months for many of our clients. Yeah. And I think it's great to celebrate those wins during this time.
Yeah, 100%. And do you think when we look out and try and predict, I ask quite a few guests about this, and they get really annoyed at me because they say I'm not a crystal ball sort of soothsayer, etc. But
I love a bit of astrology, but I can't guarantee that there's going to be any kind of, it's probably not going to come true, but I'll give you my.
Well, it's fine. It makes for good podcasting. So if we look at how long do you think that this is going to last? So how long do you think we are going to be in a situation where we're constantly thinking? Because I know that so many companies have been saying, okay, we want to try and get back to a little bit of a normal. We're a new normal anyway.
The new normal. It's just replaced unprecedented in my vocabulary.
It literally hasn't it?
That was the early word. Now it's new normal.
We're guilty of using it as well, and I've definitely changed a few of those titles on webinars, because I think that people are just so used to that. But we are constantly evolving, and so many of the companies now say, okay, I've been working on this for 2 months and I still don't understand all of the complexities. Just when you think you've got it worked out, there are then a host of other things like, I didn't think about this, I didn't think about this. So how long do you think we're going to be in this mode of, of just continually evolving, adapting, and on we go?
Well, hopefully forever, because innovation is the
Good
key
answer.
to, improving everything, the way we work, the way we structure work, the products we build. So I hope that this has impacted employers and society in a positive way, in the sense that we will not just accept the way that things have always been done, and we will not just say no because we've had a system and structure in place forever.
Yeah.
That we will actually open our mind to doing things better. And I think that a lot of businesses, the tech companies have said that nobody ever has to go back to the office, Twitter and the like. And I think that the reality is that that will be the default position for many others. But if you flip the coin and say, well, the negative side of that is that we probably never return to the way that things were, it's kind of scary. And I do have real concerns about, as I just said before, about, when you look around the city and you come into the city and you see the car parks are empty, the cafes are empty, the gyms are closed. I worry about all those people doing those jobs. So, we need to find new jobs for those people to perform, and hopefully, the economic impact won't be as disastrous as first thought.
What do you miss most about the old world versus the new normal?
I'm an extrovert, and I have learnt more about that during this crisis. I miss collaborating, socialising, hugging, all of those things.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's one of those things that you took for granted before.
Yeah.
Even as we came in here, we did the elbow pump or whatever you want to call it, and it's weird because even as you see people at the moment, your natural instinct is to want to go and give them a hug, give them a kiss on the cheek, whatever it might be. Because I'm similar to you in that extroverted nature.
Yeah.
And it's this really bizarre. It's this bizarre world where you almost feel like you're cold walking around. There's this coldness that exists,
and there's an awkwardness too, which I find really uncomfortable. And look, for me, I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I've always enjoyed the social aspects of the office. It's been, for me, a refuge in tough times. I've had some brilliant friendships. I've always had wonderful working relationships with my colleagues and clients, and I enjoy, that face-to-face collaboration and problem solving.
Yeah.
So I just don't think, whilst I acknowledge that the benefits of video are amazing, I just don't think it's the same. I think you can't read body language. You can't maintain eye contact in the same way that you can just here and now. And
I feel energized actually just being in a room with somebody else talking to them as opposed to on the camera.
I know. Yeah. And even just the kind of sense of purpose that you get from getting dressed every day, and for me, ordinarily putting on my heels and my lippy today, it's not quite the same. But I
it's
think
odd for me as well because I dressed up for you, but it's
Yeah, really just out of that black uniform. But I just think that part of work and the psychological benefits from a self-esteem perspective are really significant for some people. But I acknowledge that other people think that it's the world's greatest thing to not have to interact with others and just get their work done. It's just that that's not me.
One of the things we spoke about with Chris Good, who was from One Workplace, is that he said that the new normal is going to look like rich interaction happens when you actually go into an office and actually meet with people, because a lot of people are going to want to prefer this working from home. I know that I actually, being an extrovert, I still love the ability to work from home. I'm getting a lot more done, I believe, than I used to get done.
Yeah.
Could probably ask the people around me. JC, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
You haven't been annoying everyone.
No, I haven't been annoying everyone. But meetings, even down to meetings. So if you think about the time that is taken out for a meeting, for instance, if you are at home, you can roll from one meeting to another. I was speaking to somebody who had 28 important sort of meetings with investors that just rolled into over one entire week. And they could do that because you could do it via Zoom. There was no travel involved. There was no having to go to different locations. And I even know that a lot of the tech guys have talked about that as well, saying, do I even need to fly to San Francisco all the time? Do I need to fly to New York? But it is interesting that I think, JC, remind me, you said that there was I think there was an article that came out about how Zoom there's actually Zoom fatigue, isn't there?
Yeah, there's that is a real phenomenon, and I think that's one of the work health and safety risks that we're working with a lot of clients to manage, because not just the video fatigue, because it is just draining having to look at yourself like 24/7 and acknowledge the harsh.
Oh, no, I quite like it myself, but that's.
But also the different, like the number, like the pure number of platforms that people are communicating with you.
Yeah.
So there's the instant messenger, there's the emails, there's the Zoom, there's the text, there's the calls, and it's kind of like overload. And I hope that, and I certainly think that there are efficiencies that will be gained from those more kind of concerted gatherings of clients and colleagues. But I also think that a lot of really amazing work happens organically, and you just can't schedule that in. It might just happen through a conversation at the photocopier. You know, it might be over a walk and you know, an early morning coffee. And I think that we will lose a lot of that.
Yeah.
When we're talking about really focused, scheduled catch-ups.
It's blending of the focus with spontaneity, effectively. How do you keep that spontaneous? Because, again, I get so many good things have happened off that when particularly Arthur, who's our head of design, I'll grab him and I'll just say, let's just go into a room quickly and do this. And we come out with these solutions that we never thought were possible. But now it is very regimented. As I said, it's like, this is my meeting. This is like, if this is outside what I need to talk to you about, I'm not going to talk to you about it right now. And you miss it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that we can bring things back to, again, a new normal where we bring out, balance and bring out the best of humanity. I think that's a lot of people we've been talking about, that let's maybe get rid of some of the stuff that we didn't need. So maybe some of the influencer culture of, you know, all this superficial stuff, materialism. We get back to maybe taking the best parts out of the Great Depression motto of want not, have not, I think, need not. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it talks about really getting back to the fundamentals. But if we focus on the fundamentals, what is more fundamental than those beautiful parts of human nature about how we connect?
And human connection. I mean, I just think that is so special. And so if we can, as employers, if we can find the right balance between human, you know, genuine human connection and productivity, we're onto a winning formula.
Could not agree more. Hannah, thank you for your time, and let's see what happens ahead.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. Have a great week.
Will do.